everybody properly socialized? No? Okay, we'll do a couple more minutes. Instead of our silence, we'll just do an extra talking topic. Well, we're going to do our liturgy just a touch different this morning. We have a very special guest, a dear, dear friend of mine from, ways back. Levi, the poet, is with us. If you haven't seen the posters all over the building, we're going to host a little concert of sorts this evening. Levi is a poet. He was named that at birth, and he just lived up to it. It was great. And I won't say too terribly much, but man, his words and his albums and the things that he's made have meant so much to me for such a long time, long before we were friends. His vulnerability and eloquence and faith journey and all of it has just really resonated, and we got to do a few shows this week around town, and he shared a poem one night, and I was like, I'll be darned if that doesn't end exactly the way we normally go into our moment of silence together. So I guess I shouldn't have given that away. So yeah, come on up here, brother. This is Levi, everybody. Give him a howl. Ow. And yeah, so basically when he finishes his poem, and feel free to introduce it if you want to in any way, we'll go straight into our moment of silence for a few minutes. So resist the urge to stand up and scream and cheer for him. And we'll just collect ourselves after that, and then we'll recite our liturgy all together. Go ahead, Levi, take it away.
Check. Yes, please don't stand up and scream. I feel like that's not the vibe. I love it here. I've only been here twice. I came down once for Corey's ordination, and then this is the second time, but yeah, just wanted to say that. I've played a lot of churches for like a lot of years. This is a pretty unique one, so I don't know if you know that, but it's great. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Has anyone ever been to New Mexico? It's a weird place. It's a cool spot. And there is a campground that's north of Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the Pecos Mountains called Holy Ghost Campground. And a couple of summers ago, I went there with a couple of friends of mine who I've lived with on and off over the years. And how long? Oh, sorry, I thought somebody asked how long. Decent amount of time. How long? I'm not going to tell you. And we went hiking. I went hiking with my friends Preston and Laurel and Francis, who's my dog, who's down here just chilling on the couch, and Pink, their dogs. And we spent the time together talking, like you do when you go camping and hiking, you know, and not talking, like you do when you go camping and hiking. And yeah, we'd sit around the campfire at night and wrap it up about Christianity, which is really something. And weddings and crowd surfing, which is what I did at my wedding during the reception. So if anybody in here is trying to get wed, you want something fun to do, I suggest crowd surfing at your wedding reception with a bunch of weird rap music happening. And disappointment. And the collapsing of dreams. And the black holes and big bangs that we are. Shooting star contests. Like, who's gonna see one first? Me, obviously, I said, staring straight at Preston. He's a constellation. I see meteorites pass through his atmosphere and burn with all of the complexity of a campfire. I know that it's a struggle to feel the warmth of the suns inside of him sometimes. When the wind blows too hard on the flame, or too much kindling, or too many pine needles, or too many platitudes, or too much crowbarring of some other person's faith threatens to choke the flow of oxygen to our star gaze. It doesn't mean that God's not present. Sometimes it's just appropriate to stop talking about it. Stop forcing conversations. Stop clogging possibilities with torn out pages of how-tos, suffocating as inerrant insofar as it suits you, like a prospectus about how you, too, even all of you, can learn to see everything from the perspective of my upper hand. I spent 3 days at Holy Ghost Campground with no cell service. May as well have been 3 days in a tomb. Scared a couple of friends who didn't know I left into showing up on my doorstep, afraid that maybe I had finally done the impossible and mushroomed myself to death. And so I know that I am loved. And they may have wept like Mary Magdalene when the grave released my texts. All I know is that Christ is alive inside of people, no matter how blasphemous we get. Listen, if you're watching this, if I can dig myself out from underneath the fear of pressing publish, if I can learn to risk myself for the sake of something that I still love, then is there space for me? Is the seed dead yet? Is this burial process really something that I can trust? Then take my hand. We are solar systems. There are light years in your eyes. I have seen visions and I have dreamed dreams. I have grown into a man old enough to watch young men do the same thing. I have heard the prophecies of daughters, voices ablaze with a song to sing. I have been the recipient of miracles. I have watched the future walk away from me. And I hope that she will not turn into a pillar of salt. No matter how badly I want to be looked back at. I wanted to catch every crystal. Like, we are not flavorless, but I wish that I had not taken the taste for granted. You are the light of the world. You're the light. You are, and I am. And there will be ghosts. We'll find them in the corners that we forgot to appreciate. Hear them asserting themselves from the rafters on the quiet nights, presenting their absence on Christmas morning when we find ourselves celebrating the breath of God with an exhale. Remember when we return to dust, haunted by shoulds and should-have-nots, and confused as to how we completely lost ourselves in the process of trying to do the right thing. It's like preaching grace from some stage whose mouthpieces don't practice it. Not because they don't want to. I'm tired of that narrative too. Really, who doesn't want to? But because we do not know how to receive or rest in it ourselves. You have got to cloud projection with self-assurance and hierarchy if mercy starts to sound like death instead of incarnating itself to hallow the gates of hell. And I've been working on my morning pages, praying prayers between drinks, bunkered down inside of a constant civil war between my heart and my head over the words enough and more, and a body that is trapped and waving a white flag like enough. Enough. I can't take much more of this. Christ the brokenhearted. Christ the forced. Christ the undefended. Christ the divorced. Christ the cosmic. Christ the ghost. Christ the comforter. Christ the stranger inside of your own home. Christ the weakness. Christ the unheard. Christ the co-suffering servant of the underserved. Christ the husband. Christ the wife. Christ the indistinguishable breath of all of life. Christ the weakness. Christ the dove. Christ the clockless, unmechanical timelessness of love. Christ the real and right now and here. Right now and here, the only time and place in which eternity draws near. I fell in love with you as a child, and then I watched you disappear, and then, like scales falling off of my eyes, I realized that the monsters, so much smaller than the shadows that I couldn't help but fear. But hindsight doesn't rewind the years the foxes ran rampant in the garden, spoiling vineyards. Does it, dear? I never quite knew how to dance on top of graves, let alone grapes. Their dead always seemed to keep some hand wrapped around my ankle. Maybe I never knew what it really meant to ferment. Did we underestimate how much new wine our skins could take before they burst? Over is a word dependent upon a timepiece of which love knows nothing. And I tried not to watch the clock at Holy Ghost. That shooting star contest. Hope. Hope might just be the heaviest thing that we will ever have to carry. So be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
This is EIKON, part 14. Approaching the unconscious. Here's a poem. It's called A Story That Could Be True by William Stafford. He says, if you were exchanged in the cradle and your real mother died without ever telling the story, then no one knows your name. And somewhere in the world your father is lost and needs you, but you're far away. He can never find how true you are, how ready. When the great wind comes and the robberies of the rain, you stand on the corner shivering. The people who go by, you wonder at their calm. They miss the whisper that runs any day in your mind. Who are you really, wanderer? And the answer you have to give, no matter how dark and cold the world around you, is maybe I'm a king. 2 Corinthians 13. Examine yourselves. Take a long and honest look at what you think you believe about who you think that you are. Do not look away until you see the face of Christ reflected back to you. This is the test. Do not look away. And here's Carl Jung. He writes, whoever looks into the mirror of the water will see, first of all, his own face. Whoever goes to himself risks a confrontation with himself. The mirror does not flatter. It faithfully shows whatever looks into it, namely, the face we never show to the world, because we cover it with a persona, the mask of the actor. But the mirror lies behind the mask and shows the true face. I'm going to pause for just a moment with those quotes and say thank you, Levi. It's powerful, man. Got me all verklempt. I need a Kleenex or something. If anybody sees one around here, actually, I could use a Kleenex. I could use this feather. Otherwise, thanks. Keep from sniffling. All right, so just a reminder of the rules of engagement here for this next part of our time together. This is a teaching and also a conversation, and so your voice is welcome, and you'll find the spaces where if you got something to say, say it. So I'm going to look at this Jung quote to begin for this morning. He talks about the mirror that doesn't flatter and the face that we never see because it's hidden behind the mask of the persona, the mask of the actor. And the Greek word persona is where we get the English word personality. It's interesting. In ancient Greece, stage actors wore these large fixed masks so that people even way up in the cheap seats would be able to tell who's who and what's going on. And that was helpful and convenient. But obviously the downside is the range of expression is limited to whoever the character is meant to be. There's no way to even change what your face is doing unless there's a set piece change, an opportunity to switch wardrobes. This word hypocrite came to us from the Greek language unscathed. Hypocrite doesn't sound like an English word because it's never been translated into English. It stayed in the Greek. And hypocrite, I think, generally we take it to mean somebody who says one thing and does another, which is an accurate enough definition. But the word actually translates directly to speak or to communicate from underneath. It's a reference to this mask. It's the voice that comes out from behind the mask. And so hypocrisy, we could say, like a loose definition for hypocrisy, if we're staying true to the word, hypocrisy is becoming so lost in the drama of our own life that we can't even tell we're acting. When I was 18 or so, Martin Scorsese had a film come out called Gangs of New York. Remember that one? You guys see Gangs of New York? I watched it. I thought it was so cool when I was 18. I wonder how it holds up. I watched it like 8 times, and I couldn't believe Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. Remember him? He's only taken on like 5 or 6 roles in his like 40-year acting career because he's one of these method actor types who goes so far into character. Anyway, I read all the stuff about the movie, and it was saying how he couldn't even be like he couldn't be in the same like break room as Leonardo DiCaprio because he was a sworn enemy of DiCaprio's character, and he got into like physical altercations with him like in the parking lot. He goes so into the role he can't get back out of it, and I thought that is so cool. And these days I think, oh gosh, we all do that. I've gotten so into this role or that, this idea about who I am that and it's a funny thing. What's the most deeply, this is a pretty vulnerable question. Let's see if you'll answer it. Today, like as it stands for you today, what's maybe the most like deeply felt identity piece that you have? You know, if you're going to say this is kind of what makes me me, or this is my purpose. It's what I'm here for. This is who I am. How, you know? What is it? Helper? Oh, thank you. What's that? Carer. Carer. Is it Care Bear? Carer.
I think would that be compassion? Could a character be compassionate?
Seems like compassion's compassionator. That's good. I remember growing up, I could never figure out like what I was for. I kept like trying things, and I'm like, oh, this isn't working. I was in so many different woodwind instrument lessons. Oh yeah, I played them all, man. Clarinet, saxophone. Well, I did something with them. I blew wind into them. You had to keep the reed wet. So it was kind of a yeah. I think there's one around here. Man, I tried out for physics club and glee club, and I don't know, key club. I don't know if I didn't make any of them or if I just didn't show up after I did. I can't really remember the details now, but I was very self-defeating attitude. I remember one time when I was in like 8th or 9th grade, the guidance counselor, who I think was genuinely concerned for me, called me and my parents in, and he had this little chart that he'd made, and it showed my grades from like grade 3 to today, and it was just this like, and he was like, I don't think it's a lack of intelligence, but something's happening here that we should. Yeah, I just couldn't figure out what I was here for, and then suddenly at 30, like every opportunity, it all happened at once. My wife and I had been married for 7 years at that point, and we were expecting our first son, and we bought a house. I never thought we'd own a house. And they made me a pastor officially. They gave me like a title. It was the first time I'd ever had a title. So I became a dad, a homeowner, and a pastor all in like a 1-month period. And I thought, thank God, this is finally resolved. I'm a home-owning pastor dad. Now I know who I am and I can confidently navigate life. I mean, it helped. It was better than not knowing, but the limitations of being fused to these ideas of who we are and what's expected of us, it gets to be so constricting. And I began to take it so seriously. And I started to notice, after some years, I started to notice the energy and intensity with which I was, probably not externally. I was still shoeless with long hair. I probably looked pretty mellow. But internally, I was just gripped with what the situation requires of me and what needs to be said next. And there's just so much pressure. And it really undid a lot of that pressure. It was a combination of learning finally to pay attention to these things, and then also the pandemic, and everything stopped. And you couldn't go do the stuff that you used to do, and everybody is freaking out. I started taking long bike rides with my kids and just listening to them. And I noticed that there were some things that my boss wanted me to do, but then there were 55 things that I thought he wanted me to do and I didn't want to do, and I was doing them and nobody cared. And it's taken up 75% of my life. I don't know if you guys had an experience like that during that era, but it freed up a lot of space to learn to begin to take these roles a little bit more lightly and playfully. And there's a way to be both playful and reverent. And it feels really nice. So hypocrisy is becoming lost in the drama of our own life, so fused to who it is we think we are and what, will I, won't I, should I, shouldn't I, did I? Oh no. They didn't. Do you think they will? That we can't tell. that if our life was a reality show, it would probably be like The Office, and other people, if they had access, they would just be, I remember there was an interview with this guy who plays Michael Scott, Steve Carell. He said, if you don't know a Michael Scott, it's because you are Michael Scott. So that next slide, number 9, in Carl Jung's model of the psyche, the persona and the ego are the two conscious functions. Everything above that line are the things that we're aware of in some way. And the persona is like the protective buffer between the ego and the outer world. It's the face that we show in order to work with whatever reality is being presented to us, And it's a very helpful tool. Somewhere along the way, I realized, I'm just going to let you guys know how, let's just say I've been helping the curve for everybody. Somewhere along the way, I realized, if I drive into this meeting and I work out exactly what I'm going to say and try to imagine what the other person's going to say, then the meeting goes a lot better, even if I was wrong. And I didn't say any of this, some kind of preparation. All right, this is the situation I'm anticipating, and this is what I think would be a proper response. The persona changes and shifts from situation to situation, and so then another part of us observes this, or maybe it's pointed out to us that we're not consistent necessarily, or we just see it in ourselves, and there can be some sort of shame attached to that and a desire to show up as the same person anywhere that we are. And this, I think, is part of the process of integration, of coming to know all these different parts and pieces without judging them or feeling it's our responsibility to fix them and get them in line, but just to notice. And something like consistency then begins to happen. Let's see. Let's do this Jung quote. This is slide 10. He says, the persona is a complicated system of relations between individual consciousness and society, the rest of the world. Fittingly enough, it's a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual, which can be helpful too. It can be kind of a hiding place, like who it is that we put forward. And we can find a little shelter sometimes, even in the performance, to know that there's part of me that I'll share, and there's a lot of me that it's just for me. There are two stages of the persona. The first stage is identification, and this is what we talked about with the idea of being a hypocrite, of being over-identified with who it is that we think we are, or who it is that I hope that you think that I am. Be the person your dog thinks you are. It was a bumper sticker I saw once. There's no conscious awareness that we're playing a character and performing a role, and the world is a simple place. We just are a mom. We are a dad, or a good son, or a rebellious daughter, or a teacher, or a massage therapist, or a social activist, or a struggling artist, or a misunderstood so-and-so, such and such. And in the first stage, for many of us, not all of us, it does seem that some people arrive in the world prepackaged with a suspicion that things might not be quite what they're being told they are. My wife Jess would be a prime example of this. And I tried as hard as I could for a lot of years to tell her, no, things are exactly as they said they are. Those questions are freaking me out. Sorry. So with little awareness, or maybe no awareness, that we're in some kind of a performance, somebody wrote the script and we got born into it. That's the first stage. The second stage is a little something called disintegration. And that's where the persona is intentionally or unintentionally shattered. And I read that this creates a state of chaos or disorientation, but I think what actually happens is it reveals a state of chaos and disorientation that has always been there, or at least for a very long time, somewhere below the persona and the ego, that's been hidden from us, intentionally or otherwise, just by the amount of effort that it takes to create and maintain this image of who it is that I think I am. How have you encountered disintegration? Would anybody care to share about an experience of, your life shattering or whatever? What did you learn? What did you learn?
I think people don't typically share this because they don't want the rejection that could come from that. Because when we really open up, like people say they want to know, and then when you do, they're like, whoa. And because I think sometimes that digs up your own pain. Exactly.
My old pal Ben Swanson, probably a lot of you guys know him. He's like Christian Kevin Bacon. There's like 7 degrees of Ben. Ben it probably still does. I don't see him much anymore. But if you said, hey man, how's it going? He would just tell you. And I kind of loved it, but I knew other people that were like, oh no. You gotta be ready. One time Ben was giving us, he was teaching here one Sunday, and Joe, the lead pastor here at the time, this is like a decade ago or something, he's like, hey, I haven't seen Ben and we need his slides, so could you just run upstairs? I think he's up there preparing. And I went upstairs and he was sitting at the conference table with his head in his hands all by himself, and I'm like, hey, you all right? And he goes, I don't know what I believe anymore, man. I don't even think I'm a Christian. And it was like 9:58. So I was like, dude, you're gonna have to work that out at a different time. Like, Ben needs your slides. I think the process of disintegration makes us painfully aware of how little control we actually had over the things that we thought we had a handle on. And really over how little control we have over well, most things. And if we're paying attention to what we're learning about ourselves and the shedding of these layers, which is inherently painful and scary, and you can't tell if you're doing it right and if you're being misled. Where are the guides? Like, these paths should be better marked. Somebody should be spray painting the tree to let me know that I'm on the right path. I'm not becoming a heretic or something, or a psychopath, or what if I always was? What we begin to notice is that the things that we're unconscious of, stuff we didn't even know about ourselves, exerts more control over our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions than the things that we're conscious of. That even what we know about ourselves is just the tip of an iceberg. Jung said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we'll call it fate. But there's some very practical reasons, I think, why we choose to be, or why we're made to be, unaware of many aspects of ourselves. It's highly inconvenient to get to know yourself, really. This is very time-consuming. It's weird. It's exhausting, yeah. It's hard to find people that will listen to you enough while you talk about yourself to them, Yeah, it's expensive, right, yeah. Right, exactly. It's very impractical. I told my spiritual director one time, I was like, I'm the part of the transformation process where the caterpillar has become goo and has no identifiable features any longer and is not, you don't just go in there and get wings and fly out. So I'm also trying to be a pastor of a church. And some Sundays I just feel like saying, I don't know. Do you know? No, you don't know either. There's a little era, but something in me kept, and this is, I don't know what this is, maybe it's a calling, something in me, something would always come through, and it was what I needed to hear. And I hope it was also helpful. I told my director I should be in a cave somewhere with somebody who knows what they're doing, helping me figure out what is happening, not on a stage saying, let me tell you about God. That's really inconvenient to get to know yourself. In the Gospel of Thomas, there's this famous quote, where Jesus says, seek and you'll find, knock and the door will be open. This is how Thomas renders the same phrase, and it feels accurate to me. If you're searching, you must not stop until you find. When you find, however, you will become troubled. Your confusion will give way to wonder. In wonder, you'll reign over all things. Your sovereignty will be your rest. How do you hear that? Yeah, it's like the ocean, Misty says. It's like, you get in there and start swimming around and you find it's incredibly beautiful. You ever put a mask on and go swimming at one of the springs? It's like a totally different universe. And then you swim up to the surface and go to grab a rock and there's an alligator and a snake and you're like, oh wait, that's right, I don't live here. I'm not amphibian. You're out of your element, Donnie. peaceful and powerful and dangerous and calming somehow at the same time.
It's a never-ending journey. You're always learning more, and there's always more to learn.
Mm.
And find more to find.
It's a never-ending journey. There's always more. And some mysteries are not resolvable because they're not meant to be. They're infinitely explorable.
But the good news is Jesus invited us to search, and he didn't condemn us for searching. He said, go for it. And if you're troubled, I'm here. And you can stay in the trouble, and it's okay, because it moves. It's a journey. And he invited us. That's the very coolest thing. We have an open invitation to wonder, to doubt, to be confused, and it's okay.
Oh,
I hear it
Thank you.
as we tend to seek a destination, something concrete, some arrival, some place, some image, some goal, some perfect thing. And we get there, we find out that there's actually nothing there for us. That it was the process of exploring or searching for something where all of the joy is. And it's really seen, I think, as we get older, we look back in our lives and we often say, God, those were amazing days. But in the moment, did I realize how amazing they were? And I probably didn't, because I was seeking some concrete, affirming. It could be a number, it could be a place, it could be a role, it could be a feeling.
Ah.
And we realize that once you get to that's such where the joy is. Not unlike the uncertainty of Christ and all of that. That it's like winning in Monopoly. It's not that much fun. The fun is in the pursuit, right? The cliche, the
Yeah.
journey, not the destination. I think I hear that so much in that, in a way that's really deep to me, because I think it's in everything I think you've been saying this morning, and that it's such a trap, these roles that we create for ourselves, these ideas of what we're supposed to be. They get in the way of just being.
Well said. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Anne Lamott has a line I think of often where she says, expectations are just resentments under construction. That whatever it is, it's not there. That's what Jesus said. He said, be careful when people say, look, the kingdom's over here, the kingdom's about to arrive. He said, be careful hanging out with people like that. Because it's not how it works. It's like the kingdom of heaven is within you, or among you, or in your midst. Like, call off the search.
You could miss it in the search if you don't realize.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes God is so tangible in the transformation. Like you said, it's not at the end in mind; it's in the journey. So like each step, like His Spirit leads us into all truth. Like it's like the decisions we make, the conscious like alterations of our choices and our words and our actions. Like He's manifested in each step of that transformation. So He's tangible in the journey. Not so much of like, oh, I'm going to get to Him now and then it'll all make sense.
Mm.
He's revealing himself, and then you see how much he's cooperating with you in this transformation. So it's like, oh, he was there in the prayer, he was there in the decision, he was there in the step, he was there in the song, he was there in the connection with that person. Like you realize he's just interwoven in it all.
Mm.
It's like
Yeah.
one of the lines from the poet we heard earlier. My mind says more, but my heart is saying enough. So my mind says search for more, but my heart says Jesus is enough.
Mm. Look at that, Levi, already being quoted. Yeah. Yeah, so it's almost like, Bono, his thing, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, is like, yes! It's like this is a celebratory line. It's the,
And the Indigo Girls say, the closer I am to find.
what do the Indigo Girls say?
The closer I am to find.
The clo-
Unless I look for some definitive, the closer
less I look for some definitive, the closer I am to find, to be found. Oh, fine. The closer I am to find. Like, okay. Oh. Yeah. Wow. Really. Yeah. Well, me too, man. I couldn't hear you. You're 5 feet away. What's this? What are the indigo girls? Who are these indigo girls?
So, Bobby, this morning for me, impressed with how the journey at every love, perfect love casts out fear, but that I keep wanting to be in the solution and not in the process. The process, I find I toggle between fear and stark terror and joy and excitement, intimacy, and kind of just goes all over the place. And I'm thankful for little oases like this in the times of worship where I do feel that intimacy and it's easy to be with that feeling. But I don't like the dark feelings and the feelings of loneliness and fear that do come up in that process. So for me, just trying to be present to it all without going into a despondency that takes that fear and foreverizes.
Foreverizes.
For it to be safe to kind of be with what comes up is really important and hard.
That's good.
More to what I've been feeling too, Al, is that my tendency, I think most people's tendency, but I'll speak for me, my tendency is to run away from those troubled feelings, those confused feelings, and try to get a solution that gets rid of those feelings.
Or numb out or binge watch.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
what I
or
found
numb
in the
out,
last
yeah.
few months of a lot of chaos in my life from family things is that I was very troubled and very confused, and I couldn't do anything about it, and instead all this anxiety rose up, and I came to realize I've just been anxious all my life, and all my overthinking and all my overdoing and all of that was just the thing that was like the lid trying to keep it on the anxiety, but guess what? There was no lid. And now I'm coming to terms
Spilling
with
out.
I've been like just trying to get away from this anxiety all my life, and instead it's like, well, I could just have a little bit of wonder about that.
The French
Yeah.
existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre says that once you realize that you get to exist, a natural anxiety just sort of follows that. It's like the yin and the yang. Like once you realize that I get to live this life, anxiety just sort of comes in naturally, and you sort of get to tussle with that. So it's like kind of a beautiful disaster.
Beautiful disaster.
What that's pretty around the song.
Yeah. Yes.
Stealing from everybody.
Yeah, really. Some music rich group here.
It's like your young quote you just had like when the unconscious becomes conscious. The unconscious can't become conscious until you have endured, until you've been troubled or shaken or from my learning ability, it always seems to be in the dark to me. And I really start to like become conscious.
Yeah.
And so you learn to not hate the suffering, the loneliness, the hard part, because you're like, oh, this is where we're about to get real. This is about to be like,
Yeah.
I need to listen, I need to pay attention. And you learn to go through it instead of quickly getting away from it. And then the unconscious becomes conscious, and then you're like, this is the freedom I've been looking for. And it's worth it, I guess.
Right before
Yeah.
service, it's horrible. It's wonderful. And I put it, God is so humbling and uplifting in the same note. I think the state of balance and awareness between the two is
Yeah, one more time.
God is so humbling and uplifting in the same note. I think the state of balance and awareness between those two is the peace.
Humbling and uplifting. Thank you. Yeah, one of my some words that have been really helpful to me for quite some time is Thomas Keating. He said, "Salvation can be charted as a series of necessary humiliations to the false self. Falling upward, failing our way into freedom, uplifted by being crushed. It's the message. It's the gospel. Pick up your cross and follow me. What am I going to do with this cross? Same thing I am. In Christ, we have this perfect guide and friend, one who is not. I've found comfort in realizing that no matter what I'm experiencing, no matter how isolating or overwhelming it feels to me, like that mental trick of like, it could be worse has never really helped me, you know. Maybe it helps some people. It doesn't really help me. But there has been some comfort in the recognition that no matter what I'm experiencing, Christ has experienced. Like there's nothing new under the sun. And deeper than that recognition even, beyond the concept, I guess, or the hope, Christ has walked along every conceivable path, is the experience that Christ walks with me, through me, as me, along any path, any possibility, that there is no separateness, there is no goal. You can have goals, but as long as you know whenever you get there, I think this might actually tie together. Oh, I better do it quick. 11:33. As far as like Al, what you're saying, and Candace too, you know, it's like that, whatever that proverb is, when a cup is bumped, it can only spill what it contains. And whenever our cup is bumped, usually we say, God, please make them stop bumping my cup because they're making me anxious. And what's actually happening is we are coming into the reality that all of that stuff's in here. You can't put it in me. So the grace then, like that Mary Oliver line, you know, once a friend handed me a box full of darkness, and after some time I realized this too was a gift. So what do you do with the anxiety and the fear? Because they are unpleasant, you know, and they will drive you to binge watch stupid TV shows, and you know, and like that's like can be like best case scenario for some of us sometimes, you know, and here's the answer in a couple of weird Bible words, okay? 2 Corinthians 13, I'm just going to read this again. Examine yourselves in light of all that's happening. Take a long and honest look at what you think you believe about who it is you think that you are. Do not look away. Don't look away. Do not look away. Just somebody said 80% of life is just showing up. Jesus said to Peter, are you going to leave too? And Peter just kind of said, I don't know. Where else am I going to go? Don't look away. Do not look away until you see the face of Christ reflected back to you. This is the test. If you're wondering what the test is it a pass-fail? It's really more about attendance. This is the test. Just don't look away. I have to do this part too. I'm so sorry. It's only like a few words. Tohu wabohu. You guys know what that is? Yeah? Tohu wabohu. I got a tohu wabohu in the back. All right. Tohu wabohu. I heard this a long time ago, and I just really liked how it sounded. It's a couple of Hebrew words that we may know from the very beginning of Genesis. Says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and void, tohu, formlessness, confusion, unreality, bohu, emptiness, a void, an indistinct ruin. Their meaning together means desolation, meaninglessness. It's a picture of the ocean, which is often used in the scriptures, almost universally used to represent chaos. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. The deep is Tehom, means the depths, the deep sea, an abyss. Stare not too long into the abyss, for the abyss stares also into you. The root of Tehom, it means to murmur, to mutter, or to roar. The Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Hovering as rakaf, means hovering, fluttering, brooding. The root of it means relaxed, gentle. To be soft or to become soft. What an interesting image. The faceless face of God, gazing into the murmuring, roaring meaninglessness of creation, calling it good. The faceless face of God, gazing into the abyss, softly, quietly, patiently, persistently, until God sees his own image and likeness beginning to emerge from the waters. I'm calling this very good. Even without answers, God always gives us himself. Because God has already given us himself, we have the full measure already here. May we learn to not look away, to not look around, to not desire to be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. May we come to love who we are and to love what's around us in the way that God must, because here it is. Here we are. May we have the patience to look long enough till we see reflected back to us and whatever it is we're looking into. The image and likeness of God. What God calls very good. Amen. All right. Well, we started 9 minutes late and we're ending 9 minutes late, so really, I think we nailed it again, guys. If you've got kids, you should go get them, unless they're really well behaved. You're welcome to hang out, Corey. I don't know if you want to play a little something. Yeah. Play some tunes. You guys are, the elements will be available back here. As always, you're welcome to hang out in here for as long as you'd like. Make yourself at home. We'll keep this kind of a contemplative zone. If you'd like to catch up with your pals, you can do so in the Film and Family Room or out in the lobby. Hang out for as long as you'd like. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you tonight. What time's the show?
Doors at 5, show at 6.
Doors at 5, show at 6. Oh, that's a nice early time. Levi's going to go on it at 1, though, right?
Yeah.
He's going to make us wait.
We have a
until
lot
then.
of local openers tonight.
Okay.
A couple metal bands.
Hope to see you tonight. When you go, do so in the peace of our Lord.